Hello, welcome to Davo Loves Tacos. I'm Dr. Good, and today we're going to make adults only giant brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tart. And it's got a lot of ingredients. I'm going to show this again at the end so you get a better idea, but you've got your filling, your tart dough, and then your adults only bourbon glaze. That's why it's called adults only. So before we get started, if you missed the last video, this thing going on behind me here is what happens when the eye of a hurricane goes over your house. It dropped two giant South Georgia pine trees on our house. One of them landed right here in the middle and damaged mostly the sunroom. The other tree sliced off the corner of the garage. So that's going to take a minute to fix, but that's okay. I'm wanting to do 2 videos a week, so we're going to keep going. So we have the 3 components here. We have the filling. I've already started them a little bit, and all the instructions are on here. They're basic stuff, nothing fancy here, but it does take 3 bowls. So I'm going to do the filling first because it does need to sit just a minute. And it's brown sugar and cinnamon and graham cracker crumbs. And then some melted butter and an egg. And I'm just going to mix that all together and let it sit while we do the tart dough. It already smells so good. So it's going to be kind of, it seems kind of dry, but it does come together, and then you're going to kind of pat it down into the tart shell. And when you see the list of ingredients, you're going to see it says 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. Yeah, you want all that cinnamon in there. That's what makes it so good. So that's pretty mixed there. Didn't do anything fancy. And then for the filling, we have flour, melted butter, some corn syrup, and an egg yolk. And no leavening. We don't want it to puff up and rise or anything. So I'm gonna make sure I don't miss anything there. A pinch of salt. So I've got the corn syrup and the egg yolk and the melted butter all here together. Give that a stir, and then I'm just going to knead it a little bit in the bowl. And you will find recipes for copycat Pop-Tarts all over the internet. And let me tell you, some of them are pretty good. They don't taste anything like a Pop-Tart. Most of them use pie crust dough. And I don't know about you. What do you think? But I don't think a Pop-Tart tastes anything like pie. But maybe that's just me. So when I started this recipe years ago, I wanted to make all the Pop-Tart fillings, but this is my favorite by far. I went and bought a box of Pop-Tarts and then kept trying doughs and tasting them. That's about the only way you can make a true copycat. So you can see it's kind of coming together here. And it's a really easy dough to work with. It's a lot easier than a pie dough, a traditional pie dough recipe. So I'm just going to knead it a little bit more in the bowl to make sure it's all coming together. And then I'm going to divide it into 2. And I actually have on the recipe that this requires a 9-inch tart pan, which is great if you have one. 9 or 10-inch. It needs to have pretty tall sides because it's got a pretty thick filling. But I can't find mine. So I'm going to use, conveniently, an oblong pan. It's in the shape of a Pop-Tart, so why not? Okay, so I'm just going to make one a little bit bigger than the other because it's going to go on the bottom. It has to go up the sides too. So I'm going to save that one, and I'm going to roll this one out first. And then I've got the glaze here ready to go. It's just your basic powdered sugar, bourbon glaze. This is very thick. I might reconsider and thin it down a little bit before I put it on, but I don't want it too thin because I don't want it running off the sides. I want to be able to drizzle it on. So pie dough started. I've got 2 sheets of parchment, and I've got my little thing. You can use another sheet of parchment, but I've got my little snow pat I'm going to use. And I'm going to roll this out to fit the bottom plus up the sides about 1 inch. I haven't done this in a couple years. I hope I haven't forgotten how. The strawberry filling you can make with a jar of strawberry jam and a little bit of, just a tiny bit more sugar, and then I ended up having to chill the dough, and it worked much better. I rolled it out, and then I pressed the filling in with my hands. I had to wet my hands a little bit, but it pressed out really nice and evenly, and that filling is so good. So now we're going to make the top, put it on, and put it in the oven. And I'm going to use a little bit of flour this time. So I only chilled the dough like 5-7 minutes. And it just, I think it more needed to just absorb, kind of come together than it actually needed refrigeration. So I'm sitting here going through my head thinking of all the Pop-Tart fillings. How awesome it would be to have a whole lineup of them. But strawberry, brown sugar, cinnamon were always my favorite. And then, I don't know if anybody remembers Danish go-rounds. I loved those too, but they didn't last very long. I think that must have been around 1967, 68, a long time ago. About the same time as, were they called space sticks? This weird Frankenfood that supposedly the astronauts took into space with them. I think we're getting pretty close to fitting the top here. I'm going to measure it with the pan itself and try to make the top look like a Pop-Tart with the crimped edges. Let's see if this will fit. Ooh, it's pretty close. Forgot to turn the camera back on. I got the lid on, measured it with the pan, and now I'm going around it. I wet it with my fingers. I'm going around it with a fork to give it the Pop-Tart look. I'm going to prick it a little bit because I don't want it to puff up. So any steam that might come out won't cause it to puff up too much. And into the oven it goes. Our adults only giant Pop-Tart is done. It's beautiful. It's the color of a Pop-Tart. It's kind of brown around the edges. And I am going to have to thin out my glaze, just maybe half a teaspoon of really good bourbon from Chattanooga. That's where Dave-O is from, and they have a really nice distillery there. Just a tiny splash. It was so thick I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get it on. So now put the glaze on. I'm going to drizzle it. I could spread it, but I think it's still, since it's still warm, I can spread it if I want. You might not even need this much glaze, or you might not need any glaze at all. This would be great with coffee in the morning. Coming up, I've got a few requests. Well, other than the coconut cake, I have many requests for the coconut cake, and I promise we will do the coconut cake before Thanksgiving, in time for you to get it made for Thanksgiving. But Mindy was on, she was part of our staff at Manna, and she has requested the flounder and dill cream on angel hair. It was also one of Davo's favorites. So that's going to be coming up the next few weeks. And Sarina, hello. She has requested the strawberry gazpacho that we served at both restaurants, both Manna and at King Street. And I will probably do that in the next couple weeks. I think of it more as a springtime dish, but especially since it's served cold. As we get into colder weather, we think more of hot soups. But several more Manna dishes, and then we have a family favorite from El Matador in Raton, which has been closed now for several years. But we always used to stop on our way going up to Colorado and get a green chili burger. Not what you think. So anyway, stay tuned for that, and thanks for joining us today. Bye. And Davo has agreed to film the cutting of the adult Pop-Tart dedicated to Brian Thiel, who thinks that a video is unfinished if we don't cut into the product. And he's right, he's right. Let's see what this brown sugar cinnamon adult Pop-Tart looks like. It looks pretty good to me.